Fox 5 and Hot 97 present Street Soldiers with Lisa Evers.
I'm so glad you're joining me for this episode of Street Soldiers on COVID burnout, or what some call pandemic fatigue. While we feel for the tens of thousands of people who've lost loved ones, our hearts go out to you. And those fighting to get better, there are millions more who've had major upheaval in their lives and are just plain tired of rules and restrictions. But is there a way to flip the script and make positive changes? The reminders that we're in the middle of a pandemic are hard to avoid. The streets are full of people wearing masks and face coverings. There are signs posted outside stores and at building entrances warning people they cannot come in without masks. Look down and markings on floors serve as social distancing reminders. Restaurant dining rooms are now outdoors in the streets. Everything in our daily lives changed in a very short time. And as the months pass, people are feeling more and more done with all of it.
The fact is that the world is upside down. We've gone through a bunch of not just physical, medical, but emotional, sociological changes. People are tired. They want to get their lives back.
Dr. Jeff says that frustration can translate into ignoring safety recommendations. The official guidance has been continually changing, and the medical mixed signals have made some people doubt all of it. Others just tune out completely. The latest science can be trusted and should be followed, says Dr. Jen Caudle.
When we know better, we do better. The science has changed. Remember, this is a novel virus. We never had this virus before. As we have learned more, we have understood more.
For parents, the burnout factor is especially high, with distance learning and their role as their child's full-time teacher added to all their usual parental responsibilities. Actress and entrepreneur Tara Wallace is the mother of 3 boys. She created the Self-Care Sunday skincare line to give women something special for themselves, and she built safety measures into her kids' daily routine.
We just have masks, you know, there are so many different, we just make it a fun thing. We go online, we find masks they like, we order those masks, and we just wear our masks. When we're out of the house, we wear our masks. I always have a bag full. We just keep replenishing.
A lot starts with your attitude. We've got a great panel. Let's find out what they have to say about all this. Joining me is Dr. Jen Caudle. She's a family physician and associate professor at Rowan University. Dr. Jen, great to have you with us.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Also joining us is Dr. Jeff Gardier. He's a clinical psychologist and associate professor at Touro College of Osteopathic Medicine. Dr. Jeff, great to have you with us.
Great to be with you.
Thank you so much. Also with us is Tara Wallace. She's an actress and entrepreneur and mother of 3 boys. Tara, great to have you with us.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Nice to be here.
Dr. Jeff, in terms of this term, COVID burnout, is this a real thing?
It is a very real thing. We're talking about COVID burnout, Lisa. We're talking about pandemic fatigue. The fact is that the world is upside down. We've gone through a bunch of not just physical, medical, but emotional, sociological changes. People are tired. They want to get their lives back. And because of this COVID burnout, because of this pandemic fatigue, now they're kind of putting the cart before the horse, and they are, in many ways, not practicing social distancing, hand washing, you know, all of the things that we need to do in order to bring this virus count down in our population.
Dr. Jen, you treat people, you heal people, but you're also doing a lot of things to increase awareness and to help with public health and people understanding it. Are you seeing people kind of coming to you being like, I don't want to do this anymore. I'm tired of this?
Yeah, no, I absolutely agree with what was just said. You know, I think a lot of people really are exhausted. This is a very exhausting time. And I think out of it is a couple of things. I mean, yes, many people aren't, you know, I haven't seen my family in about 10, 11 months. And if I didn't say that I was, you know, missing them dearly and it's a bit of a struggle, I would be lying. And I think a lot of people are in that boat. But in addition to sort of the lack of sort of physical contact that we're used to having and not feeling connected, I think, yes, we are tired of not being able to do what we've been able to do before. As mentioned, there's the economic fallout, et cetera. And then I would also add this piece of, you know, mask wearing and a lot of our sort of measures to curtail this virus has actually become politicized. And rather than speaking about that in and of itself, the politicization of this issue, I think is exhausting as well. It's almost as though we are in a war, many wars, not just a war with this virus, but we're also in a war with information and misinformation, a war in, trying to sort of, manage what our intuition says to do, which is to be around people versus what we need to do. So I think we're battling a lot. And I think it is exhausting and it's tough for people right now.
Definitely. Tara, when we last spoke with you at the height of the pandemic, you were taking your boys to a family member's house in Texas. What's been your experience right now?
Since then, we packed up and we went to Mississippi for 3 months, and we're just kind of in the country, living the country life. Just kind of, I was with my mom, and they got to be outside a lot. It was just like a breath of fresh air, taking it back to something that was extremely just simple, which was just eating and playing. And we did that for 3 months until school started. So it was really relaxing for me because I was definitely burned out just from the homeschooling all day. Then there's the pressure, Gunnar getting ready to start pre-K, making sure that he's, like learning what he needs to learn and I was burned out basically. So we just packed up, we drove to Mississippi, and we were there for 3 months.
And then in terms of the kids, how are your sons doing?
Well, once we came back to Texas, they were very excited. I think the country life was just a little bit too much for them.
Well, you started in the Bronx. We have to point out you're a New York City girl via the South, but
right.
They started in the Bronx, then Texas, then Mississippi, and now
Mississippi. Texas. Right. So they were like, how many trees can one state have? Like, this is ridiculous. Like, where are the lights? But, they were, once we got to Mississippi, which was really strange, the count went up. And I was like, Mom, I've avoided Corona. And then I get here and everyone has it. Like, this is really freaky. Right. So we just kind of like stayed in the country and, just explored what's outside. What can we find? I was just trying to keep them busy and just their mind off of New York and what we normally do, and just say, hey, the entire world has changed right now. So
no, it totally has. Let me get Jeff on that point. Jeff, people are saying that never in their lifetimes, people who've been around for a while, has there been so many changes all at once in every single aspect of our lives. Is that an exaggeration?
I think we've gone from Earth 1.0 to Earth 2.0. You've heard me say that before ad nauseum. Certainly the way we were living our lives has been completely upended. We've taken an evolutionary leap in the way that we will be living from now on. Some things may go back to the way it is, but some things will never be the same. And we will see improvements in the way we live, but we see it in the way that we are dining, with regard to restaurants, the way that people are gathering, limiting that number. Even the biggest thing that I've seen, the whole idea that education at some point now has been fast forwarded where it may be online from now on. We're seeing it in the medical schools. Jen can tell you that. Can you imagine teaching physicians online, medical students, and then they come in just for labs? So yes, everything has changed. It is a culture shock, and we still haven't caught up. We are, in a state of confusion.
It's just a constant thing. Dr. Jen, in terms of your practice, in terms of healing people, in terms of teaching, how have things changed for you personally? Because your type of medicine, osteopathic medicine, your regular MD, all of those things, plus there's a much more holistic approach to treating a patient. So how has that impacted you?
Absolutely. Yeah, no, I am an osteopathic physician. I'm a family physician. And, we know that there are two types of licensed physicians in this country, MDs and DOs. DOs have additional training in hands-on medicine, but other than that, we are pretty much the same, roughly. But yes, I'm an associate professor at a medical school. And as Jeff was saying, things have changed tremendously. So our practice, I'm part of a university practice. I see patients in the office. I teach medical students in a course. And I also precept medical residents. So honestly, starting the end of March through mid-June, we switched to telemedicine. We really pulled out of the office, switched all of our visits to online, which was something I had never done before. A lot of my colleagues had not. You know, I think one of the things about this pandemic, as horrible as it is that there have been some good things in terms of we've had to learn to adapt in ways. And I think telemedicine has been a wonderful resource that I think a lot of practices will use to provide care to patients in the future in some ways. So anyway, we did that. We're now starting to get back into the office, but even, you know, training medical students, literally, we pulled them off of rotations, we sent them home and trying to teach them distance learning. It's been a challenge, to say the least, but it's been a challenge for us all. And I think that these are examples of how literally every profession, you know, this is just one example, but every profession out there, everyone has literally had to make almost a total 360 in terms of readapting their life and their work to accommodate this new normal.
We have much more coming up. Stay with us. Tara, in terms of your journey and also, you know, with the kids, how have you dealt with the whole mask situation?
Well, we have tons of masks, but just to add to what Dr. Jen said, a lot of asymptomatic people. Once we arrived in Mississippi, my mom tested positive, and she had no signs. She was never sick, and we had already been around her. So we were tested. We quarantined for her with her only for a month, and wow. You know, I mean. That goes back to what I said earlier, which was I've avoided it so far, and then I get to Mississippi and you have it, but my mom had to work. She was around children and she ended up with the virus, but luckily she was not sick at all. So you think that's a joke, like that's not real. What's asymptomatic? What does it really mean? My mom was not sick one day, not a cold, not
Thank
a sneeze,
God.
Nothing. And but because we had been around her, we quarantined with her. And literally, we just have masks. You know, there are so many different. We just make it a fun thing. We go online, we find masks they like, we order those masks, and we just wear our mask. When we're out of the house, we wear our mask. I always have a bag full. We just keep replenishing. And then even now in the drugstore, they have masks for the children. You know, to just
right,
fit them a little bit more comfortably.
They have a lot more, definitely.
Right, so we have those masks. So we've just been precautious, washing our hands, and also being flexible and constantly having a conversation and constantly educating ourselves, as Dr. Jen said, on the change and how, you know, like, I mean, there's just so much more to learn about the virus, so you have to stay abreast on what's happening. So I make that a family thing, constantly talking to the boys and constantly letting them know, like, this is what we have to do now.
No, that's fantastic. Dr. Jeff, in terms of the emotional insecurity that the fear of this virus, because I think a lot of people kind of go through this roller coaster where, yes, this is serious. It's killed, you know, hundreds of thousands at this point, several hundred thousand, a couple 100,000 or more Americans. The, you know, there's the fear of the disease. And then there's also like, well, I don't really see anybody getting that sick from it. Or we hear about people testing positive, but they didn't really seem sick, or they'll be like, I'm not in one of those high risk groups. Take us through that. Is that fear, that insecurity, the denial?
Well, I think, again, I hate to get into this, but I think it's about, you know, the politics of this, as Dr. Jen talked about. I mean, it had gotten to the point of where we had gotten with this pandemic fatigue, where people were starting to relax. We flattened in New York and in some other areas. And people were starting to become a little bit negligent. And then the president of the United States got COVID-19. And then all of a sudden, people were like, wait a minute, if the president got it, the most protected man on the face of the planet, then, you know, this thing is real. And so you saw people getting paranoid again, which I felt was a healthy paranoia. And they started taking care of themselves and, you know, doing the safe things. And then the head of state starts talking about, thank God I got it. I've never heard that from any patient I've ever worked with before. Maybe Dr. Jen has, I don't think so. And then started talking about he was invulnerable, you know, he couldn't get it anymore, and we know that's not necessarily true.
Sending these mixed messages.
Mixed signals, sending the wrong signals. And so people who are into the politics and who are into the cult of personality are now, you know, putting themselves back in danger again, attending super spreader events, not doing the right thing. So again, as our panelists have said, as Tara said, as Dr. Jenna said, as you talked about many times, you have to practice safety and precautions in order to try to avoid COVID-19.
Tara, one of the things that this has impacted so much is family dynamics. People can't see their loved ones. You went through ordeal with, with your mother, which thank God she sounds like she's doing very well. But as we approach the holidays, and as the boys ask you, like, what about trick or treating? What about Thanksgiving? What about, the holidays, all of that type of, what kinds of questions are you getting from the kids?
Well, it's, when it, they only really and truly care about Christmas. So that's always a very small event for us in terms of, I always make their Christmases at home because I want them to get used to, as they get older and have wives and have children, Christmas is always home. So that's the one thing that we stick to and that we create. In terms of Halloween, I found that they're just like other things, like their boxes that people are putting together and mailing to the children. So, just remaining flexible throughout the holidays and just explaining, why we have to be flexible. As long as they're having a good time, the adjustment for them is just, it's not such a bad thing. It's not like something they have to take on. It's like, this is what we're doing. We're going to have fun. And they're okay with that.
Dr. Jeff, what about in terms, like, how do you talk to loved ones who may not be as careful as you are, or like Thanksgiving, where there's always extra people that show up, or there's the latest this or the latest person, or there's always that one person in the family that doesn't want to really go by the rules, or, and people are drinking and eating and having a good time. It's like, how do you decide what's a safe Thanksgiving for you?
Well, first of all, you have to plan ahead, right? And so when you talk to the people who you are inviting to your home, you have to plan how many people there will be. You have to ask them, certain questions. When was the last time they were tested, and so on? What is their family configuration? And absolutely not, you cannot just bring someone else or a last-minute guest. You will not be allowed to come in. So the best thing that you can do is the preparation and not wing it, because it only takes one person, whether they're asymptomatic, which is the worst case scenario, or they're having some symptoms, to show up and you've got a major issue on your hands.
Dr. Jen, what about the safety? Like, let's just take a think, like, is there such a thing as a safe Thanksgiving dinner with family members that you haven't seen for a long time who might be coming from other parts of the country?
I'll be honest with you. I'm
Yes.
not doing Thanksgiving with my family this year. We're not doing Christmas either. My parents put the kibosh on that like 3 months ago. So, to be honest with you, the safest is to not gather with family and friends during Thanksgiving and Christmas. Maybe a couple of months ago, I might have been reluctant to say that, but what we are seeing right now during this time, the fall and winter of this country, is we're seeing cases rise. Cases are rising in many parts of the country. And while, yes, there are some parts of the country that are safer than others, the truth of the matter is, it is always a risk when you bring people together. Now, let's say someone is absolutely set on getting together and having a gathering. There are ways to make a gathering safer if that's what you choose to do. Getting tested before visiting family or friends or whomever you are choosing to get together with, keeping in mind, this is not ideal in my opinion. Quarantining for 2 weeks before getting together, if everyone does that. When you're together at the Thanksgiving or Christmas or whatever holiday you're celebrating, not eating from shared plates, not eating from a serving bowl or a serving dish.
Or family style, the family style, right.
That's right, no family style. Actually, even washing your own dishes, as crazy as that sounds, not sharing from communal things, actually wearing your masks, except for when you're eating. And if you can have that dinner or gathering outside, that's going to be better than inside. But you still got to wear your mask. You still got to, try to social distance within the house, in my opinion. You still got to sanitize and do all this stuff. Point being is, again, I'm a doctor, so I'm taking this to the umpteenth level. But the truth be told is, this is what we need right now in the middle of this pandemic, which, by the way, is not over yet. So, safety and caution is certainly better than the alternative.
But let me just jump in and say that a lot of people are not going to take it to the degree that Dr. Jen has. She stated that. They really should. I know we should. However, if you are just taking some of the major points that she's making, as far as limiting the number of people, maybe requiring people to have tests and so on, do the best you can, but you've got to be much, much more diligent than we've ever been in our lives before.
And I guess just to piggyback on that, because we're kind of going back and forth on this, and I think this is good because people do need, I don't want to say options, but you need to sort of understand the full scope to be able to make the decision that is right for you and your family. That's what it comes down to. However, I do also want to encourage people, on top of that, there are ways to gather in an enjoyable way that are virtual. And I do encourage people to think outside of the box, right? You know, how could things be different this way, but still
Right.
be wonderful, enjoyable, and things of that nature?